Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 638 with a review of Nocturne. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week in the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a streaming platform near you. In this episode, we are finishing off our round of the 2020 Welcome to the Blumhouse films. There'll be another batch coming out next year sometime. We'll see when that actually ends up being. But we've made it, Steve. We made it through all of these. In the very first episode, I talked about how my theory is that since it's Welcome to the Blumhouse, these are all going to be related to family dynamics in some way.
Yep.
And so far, we're three for three. So the big test here is going to be whether or not this one sticks to the formula.
Spoilers, I think it does.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's to be truthful, I did technically skew my statement. Originally, I was saying it's about like parents and how far they'll go for their children, which up until the last one still counted. This is the first one that's going to change that from being parent-child to maybe sister-sister. And I'm not talking about the television show.
Yeah, sister-sister, or it also, I would say, kind of replaces parent with teacher. Yeah. So there's a few ways you could read it, but definitely as a twin myself, I talked about how all these movies are kind of about a very specific experience, except The Lie. I don't know what the fuck The Lie is doing here, but all the others are about like a specific life experience and then being like, what if I made this into a psychological horror? Yeah. And as a twin, I know the experience of comparing yourself to someone else all the time. I don't know if I'm a Juliet or a Vivian, but I'm right there with them. So, That speaks true to my life experience.
Nice. Well, what do you say we get started so that we can speak to these characters' life experience?
Sure.
All right, we're going to take a listen to the trailer for Nocturne, and then we're going to bring you a review.
We heard your news. Juilliard, congrats. That's incredible.
You're thinking of my sister B. She's going to Juilliard next year.
What makes Vivian the star?
Jules, I'll always be there for you.
And you, whatever you are.
What if I could be more? What if I could be great? All I need is a chance to prove myself.
Moira Wilson was one of the finest musicians ever to grace this academy. We have decided to rerun the senior concerto competition in her memory.
I stole Moira's theory book.
She carved symbols all over the wall and threw herself out a third-floor window.
She was brilliant. The competition is a big opportunity. I have to beat her. Invocation. Moira's theory book. I've been reading it, studying it. Assurance. It's like it's talking to me. It's taking control. Triumph.
You stole my piece. I knew you were jealous. Everybody else does too. Something's up with you, Jules. I won't be there to pick up the pieces.
Music is a blood sport. You really want that spotlight. You wouldn't let anything get in your way. Not even your sister.
What if I could be more? What if I could be great?
All right, so that was the trailer for Nocturne. It is basically about two sisters who are both musically gifted and musically inclined, and they are going to a music academy, basically, and they are competing to get a big spot that might get them attention for their musical acumen, and it involves them sort of just battling it out to see who's the best pianist. And some other weird stuff might happen as well, because this is a Welcome to the Blumhouse film. But Stephen Miller, what did you think of Nocturne?
Yeah, I think the alternate title could have been Pianist Envy. Ha, get it? Anyway, I feel two kind of contradictory things about this movie. One is I think in terms of filmmaking quality, this is easily the best of the 4 of the Welcome to the Blumhouse movies that we watched. This feels like a complete vision. It builds dread in a way that I thought was totally effective. It has tons of aesthetic things that I thought were really cool, like, the classical music motif that's just good for creepiness in general. There's a thing that happens a lot where there's like a pulsing effect on drawings that I think is totally effective. This is a movie with a bunch of dream or fantasy sequences woven in, and it does a really good job of making them feel eerie and off-putting in a way that you can't quite explain. This is a movie that has at least the look and feel of a horror movie, and it does well that way. I feel like this looked professional. This didn't feel like a part of an anthology. This felt like a movie that could have stood alone. It reminded me of Raw was one comparison that I remembered of a girl finding herself and that being horrifying, the way that she chooses to do it. But then on the other hand, I think the personal nature of this story, the family psychology aspect of this anthology, is fairly weak here. I didn't really feel like I got to know the inside of these characters. It's more one character unraveling and then other people reacting to that unraveling, and people behave like they are on a monorail where they just have to go where the plot wants them to go, rather than like they are actual people with a will and a desire that could be thwarted. And that's baked into the conceit of the movie. I'm not saying it's a plot hole. I'm just saying that emotionally it made this be both the most well made and also one that I cared about less than some of the others. And yeah, I don't know. I think there's lots of good stuff to recommend it. It was moderately scary, but not in a way that ruined my night. But this is the only one that I would say had some genuine creepiness to it that lingered with me at all. I Whiplash was my favorite movie in 2015, I guess, when it came out. And so I like this idea of competitive music being a thing that can be terrifying, that you can burrow your heart and soul into and wind up ruining things in the process. Get it, heart and soul. Because it's the song you play on piano. Anyway,
gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know. I liked it. It just there's not a lot to say either. I feel like it was well done, and I don't know if I was just Blumhoused out. This was the 4th one that I watched, and if I was kind of okay, yeah, I see you, movie, but I just couldn't latch onto it in any kind of personal level. So in the end, I just felt like it was a good calling card for the writer director to say hey, I know how to build a particular tone. You should hire me to do your project. But I otherwise didn't take a whole lot away from it. Yeah.
So the first thing I want to say is I think they botched the ending of this film. I think we would need to have a spoiler section to kind of talk about that. And even in that spoiler section, I would have to be semi-vague because I want to relate it to 2 other films, both by the same director.
Yeah. Now, can I ask you, I'm going to try to ask you in a non-spoilery way, would you have wanted the movie to be such that much less happened than you think happened? I don't know if I'm framing this right. There are different ways that the almost ending of this movie could be interpreted, and one of them had me very intrigued, and then it chose not to go that way.
Yeah. So basically, the outside of the sisters dueling, the real conceit of this film is that the theoretical lesser sister has come into possession of a book that was owned by a student who in the opening scene of the film kills herself. And she uses this book to start, she kind of becomes obsessed with this book. And this book seems to be related to some sort of entity of some sort that is maybe bestowing upon her power or skill at maybe the cost of something else.
But enough about Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Boom goes the dynamite. But so so first of all, I think that story is fucking rad. I really, really, the story I just laid out, not Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. but I really was vibing with that. Like you talked about the relationship between the two sisters isn't that strong in the film, and I agree it's not. But that's like the relationship between this girl and this entity is strong. And I think that's really literally powerful. And I think that to what you're teasing at is, I think this is about communicating with an entity and trying to interpret the messages. And I think that there is a monologue in this film that lays out, I'll call it grand statements about musicians' dedication to their craft. And I think that this film posits that maybe the original owner of this study book did not interpret the messages correctly. And I think that this film had the opportunity to do something incredibly compelling and, albeit pretty dark, and do something very interesting. There's basically many ways that could go about how it unfurled what it was trying to do with this book and what the book meant. And I think this film cheaps out and doesn't do that because it doesn't have it doesn't have the bravery to do the ending that it is setting up. It just says like, well, let's do the thing that is going to be the most shocking to the people watching this. And I think that and the thing that makes me the most mad is it almost tries to pretend like it was doing that. Like,
I know it tries to have its cake and eat it too.
Yeah. And I think what this film does by the end of it really upset me, not because like I was like, oh my gosh, this film is shocking me. It upset me from like, you don't have the like, you're just not brave enough to do what you are. Like, you literally spent 3 minutes in the voice of characters within the film setting up exactly what you want to do, and you're not brave enough to actually pull that off. And that just really disappointed me. Besides that though, like I'm a big fan of story. I mean, we live in a world where people are obsessed with conspiracy theories and like finding meaning in shit that's not real. In stories, when it happens, I dig that shit up. Like, I even enjoyed like the Omega Code, which I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a bad movie.
No,
but like anything that's like talking about like revealing text in the Bible and finding these messages that like predict the future, like all that shit, I eat it up because it's an interesting trope and it's an interesting thing to do. And I really like the idea of what are the messages in this book? How is she slowly revealing them to him? What's on the missing page? Like all those things were like like I was totally like wrapped up in this story because I thought it was great. And on top of that, I mean, both of us grew up playing instruments and stuff like that. So we've like, I've never done anything competitive like this. But I've been in like, done plenty of concerts and been to like festivals where like there are stakes to the playing, but I'm not trying to get into Juilliard or anything like that. But I like the statements that are being made about what it takes to be really good at any craft. This film happens to be dealing with playing instruments. But like I liked all of that. And so like to me, I was really wrapped up in the story, and I liked this being the first real, like it wasn't like this film was scary, but this film existed in a universe where there are things that are scary, and I felt that watching the film. And I think for that, I really enjoyed this film. I just think, man, it just fucking ending just took a nosedive.
Yeah, it really didn't stick the landing. I hear you, and I think a reason the sense of dread works on me very well is much like with Whiplash, I have this like deeply ingrained fear of that moment when you're about to walk on stage to do a performance. That like any movie that harnesses that into terror or the thrill of possibility or something, like it hooks me because I bring so much to the table just from like years of always being petrified the moment I was about to walk on stage with my trumpet or whatever. And like this movie is definitely meant for that. She even takes propranolol in the movie, which is something I took for a while also to try to like calm my nerves in those kinds of situations. I totally get it. I don't know why I don't love this movie more actually, because like it checked all the boxes. Like it did really well. It just didn't, I don't know, it didn't connect. It's kind of like how I feel about a lot of classical music. Like, it's really pretty, I get it, but for some reason, like, it doesn't connect with me the way that lesser things do if they have the courage to, like, be trying to directly say something to me.
Yeah.
But I'm a twin, so, you know, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what more to say that isn't spoilery. And like I said, if in order to like really say what I want to say that's spoilery, I have to spoil 2 other movies to do the comparison. So I don't know that it's fully worth actually diving in and doing that.
Let's just do it off mic. I'm just curious.
Okay. Sorry for listeners. Also, Jamie's going to kill me because she hates when I bleep stuff out or don't include it in the episode. But yeah, I mean, any last things to say about this film?
I thought this movie had a really good, like, the set design of this movie I thought was really good. Because there are a few creepy locations. There is the practice room in the beginning of this movie, like the opening that basically sets up the movie. It is like flooded with light, and I always respect when a movie can make well lit places be eerie and disturbing, because I think that's pretty difficult. You know, the dark is obviously the thing that gets me scared more often. The practice rooms that they all work in, like, there are scenes where she is just reading the book and, you know, playing piano, and those are just like instantly creepy to me by virtue of how the room is laid out. And they do a really cool thing with like certain colored lights to make it feel especially uncanny. And then there's also a cave in this movie that kind of like comes out of nowhere that like worked on me really well. And this is, again, when I'm comparing movies to Palm Springs. I don't know why, but it reminded me of the Palm Springs cave.
Steven, it's not the cave that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's true. The cave just stopped out of nowhere. Yeah, so anyway, I feel like, again, this movie, compared to the rest of the anthology, which tends to be content to be like, we have characters, they're standing in rooms and houses talking to each other. Like, this really does feel like, yeah, I want to make a movie. I want it to feel like it has like a sense of art direction and a visual style to it. And I respect that. So I think that's cool.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that means it's about time for us to get to verdicts for this film. So, Stephen Miller, if you're going to give us a must-see, recommend with a caveat, wait for rental, pass with a caveat, or a must-avoid, what would you give it?
I'm giving this a rental. I think actually quality-wise, it is at least a recommend with a caveat. I just think if the value of these like low-budget, do a bunch of individual writer-directors, let them have their own movie, the value of it for me is to communicate stories that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. And this is the one movie in the collection where I feel like, yeah, I can name a ton of other movies that tell very similar types of stories. And I don't totally know what this is adding to that, other than just being, again, a great like calling card for this particular director. So yeah, it didn't connect with me very well, but I think it looks great. Like I think it's a pretty well done movie. It just didn't leave me feeling like I understood anything better than I did before.
I'm gonna give it a recommend with a caveat. For me, it's really like, the friggin' caveat is just that the end of this movie just botched something that it set up so perfectly. I really think that if it would have done the ending that like it clearly wanted to do the ending. Like, that's the thing. It's not just like I think it would be better if it did this at the end. It's like you laid out all the pieces. It's like in a song where, like, you know, a bunch of the lyrics rhyme, and at the end they just change the word just to fuck with you, and they're like, haha, I bet you thought I was going to say ass or something, right? Like, it felt like that, where it's like, are you just, you're doing the worst thing because, were you trying to misdirect me with a fucking good idea and then do a bad idea? Anyways, so yeah, so I really, really enjoyed this movie, and I was 100% on board. And it was one of those things where, like, as it was coming to the end, I was like, oh, it's gonna do this thing. Yeah. This is gonna be fucking great. And then it didn't do it, and then I felt sad, and then I was like, man, that movie, like, of all the films in this anthology so far, it is the one that disappointed me the most because I thought it was doing so well. Yeah. But still, recommend with a caveat, because like there are some really fun aspects to what this film is doing that that I still, it's like the ending is, I can almost pretend like that didn't happen.
Yep.
Because it did set up everything that I had thought I was doing.
Honestly, I forgot about the ending until you started talking in this review about how you didn't like the ending. I'm so curious if our after mic conversation will reveal that you and I wanted the same ending or if we wanted something different.
Based on a few of the things you said, I feel like we wanted the same. I think we were arriving at the same place, but maybe the specific thing that it chooses to do would be different. But I think I might be a little bit further along the same path, just like of more stuff that I wanted it to do. But I think we both wanted the same essence at the ending. But this is riveting podcast material that no one's gonna hear.
Hey, apparently Jamie's gonna hear it.
Yeah, well, she did hear that. She just might not. Like, I told her literally that, like, I finished it like right before like we sat down to eat dinner. So it was like I had the whole unhidden conversation with her.
Yep.
But it is funny though when you ask somebody, is like, have you seen these two movies? Because if the answer is no, you're like, well, nothing to compare to this movie then. It's like I don't want to spoil this other movies. But anyways, Stephen Miller. If people want to find you throughout the week, where can they do that?
People can find me at twitter.com/sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or Twitter.com/ChristopherIRL. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at Twitter.com/SpoilerWarning, Facebook.com/TheSpoilerWarning, or Instagram.com/TheSpoilerWarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from the soundtrack to Nocturne, so hopefully you are enjoying that. And yeah, that's all we got for this week. We'll be back next week with some more reviews of something. We'll figure it out by the end of this week. So yeah, that's it. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.